going on? What's going on?
Entertain the Geeky.
Jason O'Toole.
That's my name.
Yes. Super exciting. It has been way too long. Way too long. We haven't been on the mics in forever.
Yeah, I have definitely. I did guest star on an episode of Jam's podcast where we talked about the Venture Brothers. That was fun.
Okay, fair enough.
But he talks about cartoons from the past.
Well,
that's his whole shtick.
So, you're old blood ETG. We're finding some new listeners now, and they might not know who you are and what you're into and all that. So I figured maybe we'll dive into that a little.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I am Jason. I am into comic books and have been since I could read. I work at a comic book store as my career. And if something's going on in the comic world, MCU, Warner Brothers, DC, any of that stuff, you better believe I'm going to be watching it or enjoying it for what it is. I've had conversations recently about the MCU specifically because there are a lot of people that aren't really enjoying what the MCU is doing in the multiverse saga. And I hear that from the uninitiated, and the comic fans in my store love what they're doing because it's been the most comic book it's ever been.
Well, it's so refreshing. You know what I mean? Like we did the Infinity Saga for a long fucking time.
Yeah, and those movies are great. There's no doubt.
No, it was fun and all that. And I had said after Endgame, and I'll say it 100 more times, I was like, my MCU was pretty much wrapped up then. That doesn't mean that I won't enjoy the films and the TV series and watch them.
Sure.
What it does mean is like the story that I was initially invested in came to its head, and I was very happy with it. And like, if they would have been like, all right, we're going to put a pin in it here, that would have been fine. Fucking great.
Yeah, absolutely.
They didn't, and that's okay. I get it. You're making bajillions of dollars, and there's more story to tell.
And I think they have made enough money at this point for their corporate overlords that they can afford to experiment. Not everything has to be a huge mega blockbuster success anymore.
Right.
So they are taking us into territory that, while I understand why it's turning off the casual moviegoer, from the comic fans' perspective, it is some of the best stuff we've ever seen.
It's been refreshing.
Yeah.
Like, that's the one thing that I can say about it is it's been so refreshing.
Yeah.
Multiverse of Madness, I was
great.
so pleasantly surprised by that movie, and I did the thing where I got online long before I watched it.
Sure.
And I'm watching people shred this movie. Yeah. And I watched it, and I was like, what the fuck were they shredding?
Exactly.
This is a great flick. Like, everybody liked Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah.
It was
fan service, the movie.
It was a cool flick. And they like start to get into some of the concepts there, but actually seeing Multiverse of Madness, I'm like, dude, this is a fucking crazy cool movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thor, people were bitching about that one, and I'm like, why?
I don't understand that.
That's a
that
good
doesn't
ass
make any
movie.
sense. It was really good.
I think they wanted Ragnarok again, and I'm like, Ragnarok, it was, you had those aspects to it, but it was a good movie. Like, it was fun to watch. It was entertaining.
It was genre. I mean, they're what they're doing recently has taken us to the different genres to show that, you know, your comic book movie doesn't have to be classified comic book movie. It can be classified whatever genre you put those characters in. So Thor Love and Thunder is a romantic comedy. And if you didn't get that, you didn't get it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I understand why, if you didn't like it, you might not have got it. Right? You might not have got what they were going for.
I was tearing up in that movie, though.
Oh, my God. When he gave his powers to all the kids at the end.
I was like, this is fucking beautiful.
My mind. Yeah.
Well, it was like the scene, like the way that it made me feel, the emotions that it evoked was the same thing as when Captain America got Mjolnir.
Sure.
It was just like, fuck, dude, it's perfect. Like, it's wonderful. It's beautiful. And it was
also watching small children use, watching that little girl use her toy bunny to massacre monsters was just really awesome.
It was brilliant.
And made me sad, made me cry.
It was good flavor, though, and I can't believe that they've been shredded the way that they have.
Yeah, I don't understand.
I guess, like you said, maybe it's the casual moviegoer or the casual Marvel viewers.
When you compare this to the Infinity Saga, those movies were all formulaic, and there's nothing wrong with the formula they used for those movies, but they are definitely, big, action-y blockbusters, good guys win, bad guys lose, and every movie sets up something for the future.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That is the formula they use to hook the audience. But again, I think we've made so much money at this point that we can experiment a little. I mean, She-Hulk just wrapped up, and it was a brilliant tale of feminism, of what it is to be a Hulk in the modern world, in the modern MCU, and what the way it adapted John Byrne's Savage She-Hulk story was brilliant. I mean, it is the most comic book thing they've ever made. And that's saying something, because a lot of the things recently have been very comic book accurate.
Well, that was when Suicide Squad came out, the first one.
The bad one.
Okay. So watching that movie, I felt like I was reading a comic book. And that was one of the first times that somebody had accomplished that in a movie. I understand that it was, you have some outside production company that does movie trailers come in and do the final cut of the movie.
Sure.
And yes, that skews some things. We have the Joker in it this awkward amount. He should have been in it more or less.
He should have been the reason the Suicide Squad came together.
Right.
And he was initially. But they made a last-minute choice to change it to Enchantress.
Right. Then it wasn't, and it was just like, oh, okay, this is odd.
Yeah.
Watching it, I felt like I was reading a comic book, and like that's the thing that I have said was super redeeming about it for me in particular. I was like, this is like fucking watching a comic book on screen.
I think there are elements of it that feel that way. I think no one has come as close to making a comic book into a film as Robert Rodriguez did when he made Sin City.
Oh.
I think no one, no director, no writer, no creator in Hollywood has come near what he did to make his movie feel like it was a comic book.
I mean, that's a fair point.
And so, yes, did Suicide Squad have elements that were comic book? Of course. But it does not hold a candle to Sin City. And the Suicide Squad, the one that James Gunn did, actually made me feel more like that. Made me feel more like, oh, this is so comic book what you're doing here.
It was, and I'm not denying
also, it
that.
gave us the greatest role for John Cena of all time. I don't need to see John Cena do anything else. He just should be Peacemaker for the rest of his career.
No, he's fucking brilliant, dude. The series was amazing.
It really was.
And oh my God. That one had good reviews though.
It did. There were some people that got butthurt about the sci-fi aspects of it, because Peacemaker is such a red, white, and blue, stars and stripes, fighting fascists kind of guy. And we got him involved in a alien invasion body snatcher type of plot. So there were some people that were turned off by that. But honestly, I think that was the best part, was how sci-fi it was.
That was so fun.
Putting the character that you wouldn't expect to be in a sci-fi story actually makes for better television or movies, I think.
When of course, James Gunn is going to do that.
Sure.
Of course, the Guardians of the Galaxy guy.
Well, and that was the thing that was really funny, right? Because while there was some things about it that as a comic fan, I could say, oh, I see where they're going with this, or oh, I see where they're going with this. The aliens were James Gunn's creation.
Right.
So we watched a couple episodes, and when they finally introduced the butterflies, my wife Corey said, what is this? Like what? Because you see it right at the end of an episode, and you have to wait till next week to find out what the hell they are.
Yep.
She's like, what the hell is this? And I was like, refreshingly, I have no idea what this is. And that's refreshing.
No, it's fucking cool, man.
As someone who's been reading Marvel and DC comics religiously since I could read, it is refreshing sometimes to go into a thing and not have any prior knowledge. I envy the casual moviegoer who goes to a Marvel movie. I envy those people.
I do and I don't.
I envy the people that didn't know Winter Soldier was Bucky. I envy those people.
No, that's exciting.
To experience that with no foreknowledge would have been fantastic.
Right. That's the whole Vader being Luke's father thing.
Exactly. The emotional weight is lost if you know.
Right. And that's fair. That's very fair. I just feel like it's common knowledge though. I guess that's
because some things are common knowledge.
I was going to say
Superman is Clark Kent. Everybody knows that.
I think it's because of it's also the space. Like if you're involved with comics at all, yes, that is comic knowledge, common knowledge, and comic knowledge. But if you're just I just watch these Marvel flicks because they're cool big box office movies.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I could see where that would catch you off guard.
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of funny. I've definitely had arguments with children, not children, teenagers, right? Which I guess from my perspective are still children. But I've definitely had arguments with children who try to tell me who Iron Man is based on their movie knowledge, or to try to tell me who Wolverine is based on their movie knowledge. And while I am in a service industry and have to maintain a certain level of
professionalism
and nicety, I have definitely put some children in their place. Well, that's within the confines of my job.
That's one of the funny things about doing a show like this, because you come into it and it's like we're all better versed than the average cookie in that.
Sure.
And some of the conversations and arguments that happen outside of that, that's the stuff that they put in movies, and people are like, I don't understand why you're having this argument. Right, it's like, no, it makes all the sense in the world why we're having this fucking argument right now.
Well, yeah, because it's hard. You walk a line, right? Because you don't want to gatekeep.
No.
You want people to be into experiencing this. You want to help, ease their transition into experiencing this. If you watched an Iron Man movie, if you watched a Captain America movie and it was intriguing to you, I definitely want to point you in the direction of some good stories that are also going to be just as entertaining as that movie you watched. But there's a level of arrogance in young people nowadays. And I'm sure I was arrogant when I was a teenager about what I knew or what I thought I knew or what I perceived, that just rubs me the wrong way. And it's almost like you're trolling me. And that I just can't abide. I can't stand internet trolls who just say things to get a reaction. So there's definitely a level of arrogance I've seen in some of the teenage people who know the movies very well. There's no doubt they're well versed in what the movies are.
Right. But you're like, that character was around 60 years before that.
That are literally trying to troll me, the guy who works in a comic book store.
Right. You're like, you understand this is how I pay my bills.
Right. It doesn't seem like you're trying to make a point. You're just trying to get a reaction out of me because you know it's going to, right? That's the definition of a troll.
Well, it's so funny. One of the first episodes that we did on Entertain the Geeky, we had Peter Chu on the show.
Oh, sure.
And it was Get Off My Lawn with Peter Chu. And it was like, so Peter, for anybody that doesn't know who he is a fucking sweet, soft-spoken, kind person. And if you are uninitiated to the hobby, he is happy to share with you.
He wants to talk to you about it. Yeah.
He wants to get you into this world.
Right. You'll love it.
But that being said, there's also this aspect. He's an OG. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not one of the people that's like, all right, well, that wouldn't sit well with him.
Right.
And it's
trolling.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's so funny because there is a fine line there, like you said. But it's, oh man, it's interesting. The world's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Like with this stuff being so mainstream now, and so many people are getting into it for the first time or falling back in love with it.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see the different conversations that you can have with people. Like being in the car business for as long as I was, I was the fucking nerd.
Sure.
And they'd be like, "Hey, what's going on here with this?" So I'd give them the background that I could, and they're like, "Why do you know this?" And I'm like, "Well, while you were not reading comics for a long time, I was, thumbing through
doing
these
the
books."
opposite.
Yeah. And like conversations at Thanksgiving and stuff had the X-Men in them,
Sure.
It was just, that's what we did.
Right.
And it's cool, and it's refreshing to see people wanting to get into the hobby, and it's more accessible than ever, especially with the internet. And now,
absolutely.
Now this is cool.
Yeah.
Like people want to be a nerd.
Right. Well, and I don't want you listeners out there to think that my whole personality is derived from this thing. I also play a lot of video games. I am into role-playing, tabletop role-playing. I don't go out and run around and pretend I'm an actual knight because I'm a fat guy, and I don't want to do that. That sounds exhausting.
But we know those guys.
We do know those guys. And every time he tells me about it, I'm just like, that sounds exhausting. Like, you finish your day dripping in sweat? Yeah, I don't want to do that. don't want to do that at
You're
all.
like, where was the air conditioning? Did you get a paper cut? No, somebody hit you with a boffer sword?
Yeah. But yeah, so I do enjoy D&D. I mean, D&D is the big one, but obviously any tabletop role-playing game I'd be in. I mean, you can get me into anything.
So what do you have a go-to right now?
Right now, I'm doing Star Trek. We are doing Star Trek Adventures with some friends, and I got to be honest, I've always been a Star Trek fan, but role-playing the captain of a starship has been some particular fun that I never have experienced playing D&D.
Did you do Star Realms?
No, I did not do Star Realms.
Okay. Because you could captain a ship, but I think it's way less political than Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the whole basis for Star Trek is fucking playing politics.
And we are at a crossroads within the Federation because we are in the Deep Space Nine era. We just got past a point where they found out the changelings were infiltrating Starfleet, and the Klingons have withdrawn from the Khitomer Accords, and the Federation is on the verge of war with the Klingons again. So we are at a tumultuously political time. But I am playing Vorik. He's a Vulcan captain of the USS Tyson that we named after Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because when we sat down to play that first session, we started thinking, what kind of physicist today would influence a future Star Trek world? Because that's how
fun.
Some of the ships are named. So we came up with a couple, Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Well, it turned out there was actually already a USS Hawking, so we couldn't go with that.
Fair enough. Okay.
Within Star Wars or Star Trek canon, there was already USS Hawking. So we went with USS Tyson. I am playing a Vulcan who has taken Kolinar, so he's purged himself of all emotion. Acts completely logically. My first officer, though, is a human who tends to provide the reason and let her emotions kind of guide her decision-making. So it's a nice kind of trade-off. But as much as we are in this moment of tumultuous political upheaval, we also did a session a few sessions ago where we did a holodeck session where we used an actual real-world role-playing game called Kids on Bikes. And if you've not played Kids on Bikes, and you like Stranger Things, wow, you should play Kids on Bikes, because it's just Stranger Things, the role-playing game. It's the role-playing game about little kids who solve mysteries and get into trouble and adventures and stuff.
It's like Nancy Drew, the role-playing game.
Exactly. Or the Hardy Boys or whatever one you particularly enjoyed. But so we are aliens, and Kids on Bikes is set in 20th century Earth. But unless you were a specifically weird student, you wouldn't have studied 20th century Earth. So that gave me a chance to flex the role-playing muscles of a Vulcan who doesn't understand 20th century Earth culture. So they asked me, which character do you want to be? And my response in-game was, I will be the leader, because I am the leader. And so they gave me this basketball player guy, right? So we're in the holodeck, and I say, computer, 20th century Earth teenage child clothing. And the computer, because it's a computer, specifies more detail. And I look at my card and I say, I am apparently a basketball player, because he has no idea what that is.
Right.
And then bikes appear, and he asks, what the hell is this? She says, it's a bicycle. It's a means of conveyance. And so my first inclination is, where are its propulsion engines? And she says,
their legs. She
says, you're the propulsion engine. And the natural response from Vulcan would be, that is illogical. So yeah, it's a game that, like, I like Star Trek, but I've never played a Star Trek role-playing game before. And it's a game that's actually allowed me to be more creative as a role player than I ever have in a D&D game.
That's one of the things that gets so tough with when you're playing D&D. So many people get into stats.
Exactly.
Instead of, well, no. What am I feeling right now?
Right.
Why would I take this course of action? Why wouldn't I? What am I afraid of here? What,
exactly.
What makes me feel brave? And like, sure. that's the part of role playing that I think is the most fun.
Yeah.
Is getting to be an actor.
Right. I always urge my players in whatever I'm running to players start talking to each other. My question is always, are you having this conversation in game?
Right.
You should be. If you're not, you should be. This should be your character's conversation, not your conversation.
Well, I do a voice for my character in my current campaign.
Too, but not everybody does. Some people just use their normal speaking voice.
And that's totally fine.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons that I do it is it's my cue that it's not Chris talking. It's Dungu.
Sure.
It's
Is that your current role-playing character?
Yes.
Okay.
Dungu, he's a goblin sorcerer.
Goblin sorcerer. What a combination.
Yes. I wanted to have fun with it, and I was like, God damn it, I'm going to. So yes, sure. Dungu is this goblin sorcerer. He's got a draconic bloodline. And basically, because, they could be dragon fodder, more or less. And we're finding out that he is linked to this big dragon that has had that's had a big hand in our overarching story as we've played. We finished, I did one campaign, and there was a dragon that played a big hand in it.
Sure.
And he's the one that is my, my link to the dragons, basically.
Dragon kind goblin. It's interesting. Who's a sorcerer?
No, it's different.
It's a great combo.
And that's what I wanted to do. And he's, because he's a goblin, he's in this interesting spot in the world to where he doesn't necessarily understand normal social cues.
Of course, sure. Yeah.
Why would he? He's been raised by goblins. It's like being raised by wolves. You're a savage.
Yeah, it's like playing an orc.
Exactly.
They just don't understand society or culture.
So there's like things that come up, and like getting lied to. It doesn't sit well with him. He doesn't really understand it.
Sure.
And that's something that's come up. Like one of the players lied to me. He robbed somebody, and then he's like, "Oh, he gave me these." It was a store clerk, and I was like,
sure.
"Oh, great. He was mean to me for being a goblin." And then come to find out, I'm like, "Hey, man," I told him out of game. I'm like, "Look, dude. I'm like, I want you to know that if I ever catch wind that you lied to me in game, he's going to be really upset, like very hurt, because he doesn't understand this yet."
So I'm curious then, just based on what you've told me here, is your goblin good or lawful?
He is,
because that is strange.
He's chaotic good. And it has to do with his draconic bloodline. It's a silver dragon.
Even the good alignment at all in a goblin is strange.
No, it's completely odd.
Yeah.
And that's why he's not with goblins anymore.
Right, okay.
It doesn't fit in.
He's the dark elf Dristowarden who hated dark elf society and decided to go find his own friends.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. When it's not like he decided, it's like, dude, get the fuck out of here, weirdo. We're going to go rape and pillage, and you're not willing to play the game. So go fuck off,
Sure.
So he's finding his way in the world, and he was working as a deckhand because he doesn't fucking fit in as a normal functioning member of any society.
Is this D&D or Pathfinder?
It's D&D 5e.
Okay. So you're basically a miniature orc.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's kind of how the goblins are designed in that game.
But it's been so much fun to actually play him and get to explore the character a little bit, and do my little Dungu voice, because like that's his thing.
Yeah.
And we're using basically all classes, all races for the most part.
Sure.
We're even doing some homebrew shit that like the Critical Role classes that are on D&D Beyond.
The Critical Role books are part of D&D now.
Right. So Blood Hunter.
The world he created?
Taldore? I think it's Talbore. Yeah.
Taldore? Yeah.
Something like that.
I was going to say, Taldore is just now a realm you can play D&D in.
Yes.
They've integrated it completely.
And they should have, because how many people has that guy brought to D&D?
I mean, a lot. I'm not a big fan of Mercer.
I know.
Personally.
I know.
But he is a good businessman. Instead of selling his property, he licensed his property. So he will continue to make money on it as long as D&D is popular, and I don't think that's going anywhere.
No. And especially with D&D 1, right around the corner.
I don't really understand.
It doesn't make sense to me. It's to digitalize it. That's the big thing.
No. They're still going to release physical books and stuff.
They will, but it's all based on 5e, and they're supposed to be dumbing the system down further, is what I heard.
It's not based on 5e. From what I understand, and because I am a retailer, I've got access to some information you might not have access to, or our listeners might not have access to, that I have signed no NDA I can talk about. It seems to be, I don't know if you remember GURPS, the generic role-playing system.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically designed to be anything you wanted it to be.
Kind of like Savage Worlds.
Yeah. And it seems like D&D 1 is that, but for D&D. So if you still want to play first edition D&D 1 will be compatible with that. If you still want to play third edition because, man, that was a good one and that was your favorite one and maybe that's the one that got you into the game, D&D 1 will accommodate that. Within integrating the tabletop experience into a digital experience, you will be able to go in and build your own digital maps and digital figures, digital miniatures, having real-time representations with sound and effects to represent what a battle is, what's happening in your battle.
And those are things that I find exciting about it, but I'm also like, I don't need to do D&D the video game.
So it's not a video game.
I know that I understand, but we're starting to cross over into that realm a little bit, because if we're doing it completely digitally,
it's not completely digital though. There are aspects of it. The digital aspects of it are meant to enhance the tabletop experience, not detract from it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's exciting. I think it's going to be a little bit of double-edged sword. I'm not 100% sold on the idea yet. But I think they're moving away from, the reason they're doing it is because they're trying to move away from editions.
Yes.
They feel like they've got something good with what 5th edition is, and I am hard-pressed to disagree with them because they're right.
It's very good.
It has brought in a lot of new players. It has generated a lot of new revenue for them. So I think they don't want to stop pushing that.
Yes.
Because it's working so well. Maybe one day we will see something beyond 5th edition, a 6th edition, but that's not what D&D 1 is. It's not intended to be the next edition of D&D.
See, and here I am. I'm like, it's just 6e.
It's not.
Because the way that it sounded based off of the literature that I had read with their press release, I was like, okay, it sounds like they're going to dumb down 5e a little bit.
No, actually 5e is still going to serve as the basis,
yes.
The base rule set for what D&D 1 is. But again, it's supposed to be compatible with any version of D&D. So I know that's not a real red box over there, but
it's the Stranger Things one.
Right. But if you had a real red box, you could use it still.
Interesting.
Right? It's going to be fully integratable into what the D&D 1 experience is.
So would that go back to white box with TSR?
I think it just goes back to 1st edition D&D.
Okay.
So I don't know what that all entails yet. They have not released any kind of consensus as to what that all entails, but for everything that D&D has been throughout the years will be compatible with what D&D 1 will offer.
Interesting.
Now, 5th edition is still the basis because it's the current edition and it's the one that's popular, but it will be compatible with other things as well.
So with my play group, because we were discussing before any announcement was made, we were discussing what happens when 6th edition comes out. And I was like, look, we're bought into 5th edition. There's guys that still play 2.5 or
you're right,
2nd edition or whatever.
We all say that when in the moment,
right?
But we still buy the new books when they come out.
Sure, and
right?
and that's one of the things that I said. I was like, we can buy books, we can test the waters, and if we don't like it, or if we like our old version better, we'll just play that.
Sure,
no big deal. Yeah. But what I guess I read it wrong, because what I had assumed based off of what I was hearing was that it was going to be a dumbed down version of 5e, because they were talking about being even easier for new players and stuff like that. And I'm like, fuck, man, like I want a little more crunch than what 5e has to offer now.
Sure.
And I want some better scaling.
The part of it they're talking about, though, that what you're interpreting is accurate, but how that is integrated is going to be on a case-by-case basis, right? 5th edition is still the basic rule set that they're going to go with, but if you want a slightly more streamlined version, say you're introducing your children to the game and they're 6 and 8 years old, right? And they're going to be not as invested in the paper aspect of it as much as they are in the imagination aspect of it. D&D 1 will help you accommodate that.
Okay.
Will offer you a different way to experience this that may be more compatible with where your children are developmentally, where your friends are developmentally, because obviously there are people that have developmental disabilities or physical disabilities. We want everybody to be able to enjoy this. And I know right now I probably sound like I work for WotC. I do not. They're not paying me to say any of this, but I do think this is going to be a good thing. I'm skeptical because I don't fully have all the information yet.
Cautious optimism.
Right. But I am cautiously optimistic that it could be something that's really good for D&D and helps it expand to anyone who might want to be into it, regardless of what holds you back.
Well, there's things about it that are attractive. So like, let's say you have a long time play group, but you guys live on different sides of the country now.
Of course.
That's great.
Yeah, but we already solved that problem.
We did.
Like Discord and shit like that.
Discord, yeah. One of the 5 or 6 websites that accommodate that, yes.
Yeah, that host your game for you.
Exactly. Yeah. You can roll digitally here.
So D&D 1's not new in that regard.
No. Yeah. But if you're trying to have an all-in-one.
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely.
My rule book's here, everything's here.
Yeah,
blah,
this is
blah,
your
blah.
whole toolbox in one book.
And I can see where that's attractive and could be a good thing. Is it going to be a subscription service? Like, that's the stuff where I'm like,
no. It's so I don't know all that information yet. They have not talked about whether or not these servers will be free to access, whether you will have to pay for them. But at the end of the day, you don't need the server. The server just offers you a way to make it a little more engaging by, like I said, creating digital maps and digital miniatures to have effects and sound for your battles or whatever you're doing. The crux of the game is still going to be you at your table with your friends.
Okay.
Right? Role-playing, kind of talking it out. I think that the online aspect of it is meant to be more supportive than main. Okay. Right? It's not supposed to be the main impetus of how you're experiencing this game. It's just to support what you're already doing. Now, again, I don't know.
Right.
These are things, this area of conversation I'm kind of speculating on because I don't know all the answers to that. I don't know if you're going to have to pay for it. But I do know one of the things they're talking about doing is when this D&D 1 is integrated, the books will be sold with digital copies.
Yeah.
So you won't raise the price, but as an incentive for buying the $50 book, you will get the digital copy for free. That once you've uploaded your digital code and claimed your digital product, you will be able to share that with anybody else that's sharing your digital environment.
The one bummer there would be those of us that do secondhand books.
Of course, sure.
Yeah. Because like I totally fucking do.
I have in the past. Working at a store definitely helps me
discount,
to not have to spend $50 on a book.
Right.
So yeah, I understand the idea of going secondhand. Most of my 3rd edition books, I was a teenager. Most of my 3rd edition books were bought secondhand.
Right.
Or I didn't have no money. I was a teenager.
If you go to the used gaming auction, you know what I mean? And it's like, I can score 7 books out of this. Like,
right. For $20.
Right, why wouldn't I? Yeah. It only makes sense. Yeah. No, one of my players, so I say my players, he's DMing now.
Right on.
He's my uncle. He was like, man, I need to get all these books. I'm like, well, don't worry about it right now. I'll just use mine.
Sure.
So then he gets on Facebook Marketplace, finds a guy that's, offloading
selling
the
them all.
books for a stupid good price. He had like $25 a book or something like that.
Yeah.
And he got 4 books and he felt good about it. I'm like, dude, that's all that matters. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
If you're happy with making the purchase, cool. You didn't have to. He's like, well, I just want to have, my own copy of everything. And I'm like, all right, more power to you.
And I'm definitely all for, like I said, saving money. I definitely, people in my store and it's kind of an insulting thing to say. And, so this is a little bit of inside information. If you're ever in a retail store, like the one I run or work at, don't tell me I found it cheaper on Amazon. Don't tell me that.
Right.
Because while you're right, it is cheaper on Amazon. My response to you is going to be, then go fucking buy it on Amazon.
Well, why are you?
Because they don't really care.
Why are you here?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you come here to support the brick and mortar store.
People come, though, because they're curious if you'll match that. And what they don't understand is, how could I afford to match that?
Right.
I would be out of business.
I'm paying the same price for the book that you are.
Yeah.
The difference between me and Amazon is they can buy 12 million copies of it, so they get a stupid discount.
Yeah. So that is one of those things that I'm not opposed to getting books for cheaper, right? If you found a deal, take that deal, man. Seriously. I've done it and I get 40% off all the shit I buy.
Right.
And I've definitely found it cheaper on Amazon. Sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Sure, that or one of the big gaming retail, like Miniature Market.
Miniature Market. Yeah, one of those places for sure. But I am trying to expand beyond the limited knowledge I have had of role-playing games in the past, because I don't care what you're into, listeners out there. Whatever you're into, I'm guaranteeing you there's a role-playing game for it.
Oh, 100%.
There's a role-playing game for everything.
Or there's supplementation for a big role-playing system that you can use.
We're about to do, this Saturday at the store, we're about to do the starter box for the Alien RPG. And I've read the adventure. The adventure is awesome.
Nice.
The system is great.
Are you running it?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm running the starter box, and then we're going to give the starter box away to one of the players randomly at the end.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'm excited, though, because, again, I've read the adventure. I like the dice, the way they're designed. They're really cool. You're playing, Colonial Marine type characters. The starter box has, pre-generated characters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the adventure is scary. It's very isolationist. It makes you feel like that first Alien story.
Oh, that's cool.
And yeah, I'm just excited to play in a world like that, right? I've always loved Alien, since watching Ridley Scott's original vision for it. So yeah, I mean, I can't believe I've never done that up to this point, but I'm excited to do it.
And, you're a video gamer too. We were talking about this off mic earlier.
Yes.
So what's your shtick? Like, what's your thing there?
Most of the games that I play nowadays are single player kind of story driven narrative experiences. Like, I don't knock the Fortnites or the Team Fortress or the Overwatch or Call of Duty or any of that stuff. I think they're great games and they have their fans, but I prefer to have a little more. I prefer to feel while I'm playing a video game like I'm watching a movie. Because I like watching movies. I like reading good books. So I prefer to have some kind of narrative driven experience. I'm currently replaying The Last of Us, at least the remake that they did for PlayStation 5, which is great. It's a great game. It was a great game back in however the hell long ago it came out on PlayStation 3. It's a great game still to this day. And now that they've brought it up to par with the sequel that came out on the PlayStation 4, it's a consistent narrative between the two games, not only from a storytelling standpoint, but from a character model standpoint, right? When I saw Joel in The Last of Us 2, God, that's the best Joel ever looked. Never seen Joel look like that. Now that the old one has been brought up to that level, there is a consistency between how Joel looks in the first one, and it's the same model. I mean, they just used the same model.
Oh, that's incredible.
It feels like one game across two now, as opposed to two separate games that came out years apart from each other.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you've taken time off for God of War.
I have. I've requested the weekend of the God of War Ragnarok's release off so that I can fully delve into that game's narrative, because it's the finale of the Norse saga. They did this one in 2 games instead of doing it in 3, which I love. Cory Barlog, the game director and the Sony's or the Santa Monica Studios head, literally said, these AAA games, they take a long time to make, and I don't want to wait to see this story done. So we're going to do it in 2. I want to see the conclusion.
That's badass.
I want to see the conclusion just as much as you want to see the conclusion. So we're going to do it in 2.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've been talking about with a few friends recently is unfinished games being put out.
I hate the concept of unfinished games being put out.
I mean, it's a beta test, so just call it that.
PUBG started out as an unfinished game.
Fortnite. Was
Fortnite put out as an unfinished game?
It was put out as beta. It was Fortnite beta for the longest time.
Because like Minecraft was the biggest example. That game was put out in beta, fully released to the public, and now it's a finished game. But back then it was not.
That's exactly what Fortnite was. It was Fortnite beta until a couple of years ago, I guess. And that game's had a 6 or 7 year run now. Like,
sure.
It, and then Cyberpunk 2099. That was one of the most recent ones that I'm just like,
2077.
Or 2077, yeah. I'm thinking Spider-Man 2099. I'm just like, man, how is it that years ago we would buy a console and they'd put a game out and it was done?
It was the whole game.
That was it.
One package.
We didn't buy DLC content.
No.
You waited for another game to come out and you didn't know if or when that would ever happen. But I had a finished title in hand. More and more companies are giving us the half-baked version of the game, I guess, to get it out faster. And I understand that, like,
or they finish it and then they piecemeal out several pieces and sell them back to you later as DLC.
It's disgusting.
It is.
Tiny Tina's is one that Buddy was telling me about. He's like, look, dude, he's like, DLC came out within a month. He's like, and all it did was make the story the story.
Sure.
He's like, that's not acceptable.
Right.
And he's like, a bunch of games are doing that now. Overwatch, they just had so Overwatch 2 was supposed to come out in, I think, February of 2021. Sure.
Oh, damn.
Okay. Way behind. And they delayed it because they were having internal issues. Okay.
Sure.
Whatever. I can deal with that.
Yeah.
They put out beta. I played beta. I was like, cool, this is going to be a really neat game.
Sure.
And then they released the game and it didn't fucking work. You couldn't log in for the first day or two. A lot of us couldn't.
Yeah.
So I just gave up on it. And then 2 days after that, half your characters were grayed out, so you couldn't select them. And
Jeez.
I'm like, this isn't a bug if it happened 2 days later and I could play these characters before.
Right.
Like, this is
unacceptable.
Like, what's happening here? And they've even said the game's not finished. You're still going to get the PvE version of the game. And I'm like,
okay.
I understand that it's free to play and that you're doing us a favor there. Just say that it's Overwatch beta.
Sure.
Because it is.
Don't call it the finished game.
Yeah,
it's not the finished game.
We released it. No, you didn't. You gave us the beta.
Right.
We have access to the beta. Let's just run with that. And that's cool. Like, just call it what it is. And I can't fathom that years ago we could put a game out and it was done, and now we can't.
I think there are definitely examples of companies and games that buck that trend, and I like to see those things, right? I mean, one of the ones that I talk about a lot is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. That game never got an update until the DLC pack came out for it, which was the Integrate, right? The stuff where you play as Yuffie, the little side story, and it's a short content. I mean, you can get through it in 4 hours or so.
Okay.
So it's not much, but we live in an age where most games get day one patches, right? The day the game comes out, it's got a huge patch to download because there was something that was not finished. The Final Fantasy VII Remake came out. We went about a month, and I didn't see an update. I was like, that's weird. And
was anything broken in game?
No. And then we went a couple of months without seeing an update. Before I knew it, 6 months had gone by. The game didn't get an update. That's how you make a game, right? You finish your game so that you don't have to patch it 24 times in the first month.
They had fucking... they had
and that
framework.
Was a huge game.
They had framework, though. Like, you had a whole story and everything, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, I know, but everything about the game's engine was built from the ground up.
Right.
For this new remake, you didn't reuse assets from the PlayStation 1.
Right, you can't.
Right? So you delayed it and you delayed it until it was finished. And yeah, people got pissed off by those delays, but wouldn't you rather have a finished product?
Well, and how many more people enjoyed it all the more because you gave them a finished product?
God of War 2018. Just another example. No DLC for that. I mean, it's gotten patches to fix bugs or add modes, New Game Plus and photo mode and all that, but it doesn't have DLC. They sold you the whole game.
That's how it should be. That's how it fucking should be.
Exactly.
If you're paying for it.
Right. Here's the whole game. We didn't cut something out that we could sell back to you later. We just gave you the game. Here's the game.
Well, on the tabletop version of that, like Fantasy Flight is the company that's always been notorious for giving you an unfinished game.
Oh my God, I know.
And then selling you the finished product later on.
The rest of the pieces later.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And I'm just like,
whether that be dice or more miniatures or whole new scenarios.
The cards. And it's just like, dude, why are we doing this with video games? Like, we're better than that. We've had you've been playing games for 30 years.
Absolutely.
How many finished games did you get all up until recent? And I'm just like, come on, guys.
There's another thing that I was going to mention of companies bucking the trend. Now, this is not true across the board, but when the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake came out from Capcom, they had DLC. They gave that DLC out for free. Now, at the time, the head of Capcom America put out a statement saying, look, you already spent the money on this game. This little side content is nothing. It doesn't add to the story. It doesn't add anything to the narrative. It's just more fun stuff to do. You shouldn't have to pay for that. We believe you should not have to pay for that.
Well, how many more people would go out and buy the full version of the game?
Exactly. And those games went platinum, whatever they call it in the game world, very quickly, right? They definitely sold a lot of copies very quickly.
Well, and I think it was more than once over that went platinum.
Sure, yeah. And then Resident Evil Village came out, which is Resident Evil 8, I guess, which was the last one that they made. And it's got DLC coming out this month. And the package is $20. But what that gets you is a whole new 4 or 5 hour story side content thing about that's not set during the game. So it's not something they took out of the game. It's something that's set way after the game, where you play as a character who's literally a baby during the game as a teenager, right? So it's extra content.
You're dealing with repercussions of
and they're
what happened in the game.
They're changing everything about Village. They're adding third-person mode to the game, which those new Resident Evil games have been exclusively first-person games, but Resident Evil's been a third-person type of game forever. Right. Well, and that requires reworking every cutscene in the game, because every cutscene in the game is shown to you from a first-person perspective. So every cutscene in the game has to be reworked to accommodate a new third-person view of your character.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, $20 seems like a worthwhile price tag for a new experience to the original game and a 4 or 5 hour side story DLC content that takes place after the game's main narrative.
When you had engineers, game designers, artists, all that have to redo a bunch of stuff.
Exactly.
Like you said, with cutscenes, that's fair.
Yeah. Every cutscene had to be redone.
Yeah. That's
to accommodate that perspective.
Totally fair.
And add in the model of the guy.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because the only thing in the model of the guy that they had to design was his hands. That's literally all you ever saw of him. Right. So all they had to design of the model when they made the game initially was his hands. They had to literally add in the rest of him and rework the entire way the game works as a result of that.
We went from hardcore Henry to a movie.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think there are moments when extra content is sold to you justifiably. I think there's plenty of examples of companies that sell you shit you should not be paying for, that should have just been part of the game, that they literally was part of the game, and they carved it out, separated it from that file so that they could sell it back to you later. And that's wrong. So there are trade-offs, right? I'm supportive of DLC, but it's a double-edged sword. It depends on what your content is.
Right. If it's going to complete the first leg of the game that I was doing anyway,
I shouldn't have to pay for that.
Right. That was the game.
But if it adds to what I've already experienced, right, that's different.
Or if it's a side quest, or like you're saying with Resident Evil, where it's a fallout from the story
in the aftermath of the story.
Yeah, like that makes perfect sense.
17 years later,
that's acceptable.
Yeah, absolutely,
that's totally acceptable. Okay, and we're starting to get close on time. What things are you most excited about right now?
Okay.
You could do 2 or 3. I know there's probably a lot.
Sure, I'm going to pick one from each category.
Okay, shoot.
Movies, Black Panther. Wakanda Forever looks fantastic. I think it's going to be the movie that's going to be more in line with what the MCU used to be, so that those people that have been bitching a lot can be a little happier. And that's not to say it's not going to be treading new ground. Namor is going to be introduced. Atlantis is going to be introduced. I'm very excited about those things.
That's going to be bitching.
Yeah. It looks like a great movie. Comic book wise, the Thanos event that's coming up that Donny Cates has been building to in Thor for 29 issues now. Thor got a vision of the future at the end of the first arc of Donny Cates' run that showed Thanos holding Mjolnir with the Infinity Stones slotted into the hammer, wearing the gauntlet of Null, the god of symbiotes, and he's flanked all around him by the Marvel zombies. That was just the picture they showed us, and I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what that means. It's about to start literally next month. So I'm very excited about that. Video games, God of War Ragnarok. The Norse saga, the first leg of the Norse saga is beautiful. As somebody who has had a couple of different people I call dad in my life, it hit me right in the feels playing that first game, watching Kratos try to be a father, a friend. It definitely is an emotional journey that you go on with him and his son. And the next game looks to finish that story up, and we're going to see, how the changes that Kratos made to who he is as a person and all the truth and information that he's given to Atreus about who he is going to be explored. And spoilers, I mean, it's a game that came out back in 2018, but Atreus is Loki. And that's interesting. That's an interesting concept, to take the son of Kratos, a god from the Greek world, and make him the father of a god from the Norse world. So I'm interested to see how that all plays out too.
Yeah.
Television. I don't know that there's anything immediately coming up that I'm excited to watch. There's some things in the future, like Secret Invasion, that I'm very excited about. But there's nothing right now. Most of the things that I was excited about in TV have finished. Andor is still going on, and that's great. And if you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's not for the Baby Yoda crowd.
You still get to finish Stranger Things, too.
I do. I still need to finish Stranger Things, yes.
Oh, I'm so excited for you just on that one alone. I'm like, God damn.
But so, yeah, those are my top at the moment. But that changes day to day.
Well, of course, as more information is made available, this could definitely, it's a subject to change.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, cool. If you guys want, you can go to entertainthegeeky.com to follow us on all of our social media. Subscribe to the RSS feed here. Listen to the show. Jason and I are talking about getting another show up and running again. So once we, officially do that, we'll make that available to you. And
yeah, if you like hearing my voice, you're going to hear a lot more of my voice. I hope you like it, because I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah, this voice is going to be there. Giggles and all,
Oh,
all right, guys. Stay geeky.
Stay geeky.